Professor Wang, I'm so pleased to interview you today regarding the current situation of the global pandemics. We know that Professor Wang is a very famous scholar in the world. He is currently a professor in Stanford University Medical College. In addition, he graduated from MIT as well as from Harvard University Medical School. So Professor Wang is very good at not only medical studies, but also he's very good at so-called medical policy. He also got his PhD degree from Rand Corporation, and also he was a postdoc scholar in UCLA. So we are so pleased to have Professor Wang today to discuss the current global pandemic situation, and we hope he can suggest us how to prevent the current pandemic infection. So Professor Wang, could you first give us some general description of current global trend of the pandemics?
Thank you, Minister. So at the moment, we have developed, the scientific community has developed very good vaccines, but we need to distribute it to the vaccines all over the world in order to prevent the further spread of COVID and the forming of new mutants. And so right now, we are in a hopeful stage where we need to quickly deliver these vaccines. And so without the vaccines, we could be stuck in this situation for a while.
I know that maybe we need to live with the current situation with COVID-19 virus. However, could you give us some suggestion regarding the current situation, how to prevent the infection from the COVID-19 virus?
So for a typical individual, so if you're not vaccinated, get vaccinated if there are vaccines available. Now, if you go outside, indoors is much more risky than outdoors. And so do not stay in a crowded indoors location for a long period of time. And certainly if you're indoors, I would recommend wearing a mask. If you're outdoors, you should keep distance from other people. So also don't go into a crowded outdoor space. But if you're outdoors, you could take off your mask, but have a mask ready. So when people approach you, you could then put on your mask. And I think if you do that and get vaccinated, I think the risk of getting COVID is actually relatively low.
We see some trend of the current pandemic confirmed case in the United States is reaching historical high. Could you give us some idea whether it will be safe or dangerous to stay outside in the United States?
So the U.S. is a big place, and so it depends on where you are in the U.S. So in the Bay Area, where I live, in San Francisco Bay Area, over 70–80% of people are vaccinated. And so you're relatively safe in the Bay Area. But if you travel to other places in the U.S. where there's less than 50% vaccination rate, and most people are not wearing masks in crowded areas, then your risk is higher. And so depending on where you're traveling in the U.S., I think you need to be prepared to wear masks. And certainly getting vaccinated will protect you.
Many people are discussing about the so-called regular influenza situation, symptom in the United States and even in the world. That is, we need to live with the COVID-19 virus in a very long term. So what's your assessment regarding this kind of situation?
Whether we could contain the virus in the next year or two really depends on how fast we could get the world vaccinated. And the way the virus works is that it could spread to other people, unvaccinated individuals. But if the virus try to infect a vaccinated individual, they hit a wall, basically. So then they try to go other place to an unvaccinated individual. And so what we want to do is to create all these walls so there's no place for the virus to spread. Now, once the virus spread, the virus could mutate into a different strain or different variant that could, be even more infectious and sometimes lead to more severe disease. And so we don't want that to happen. So we don't want to have lots of people unvaccinated become a reservoir for the virus to continue to infect and to mutate. And so I think the international community should work together to try to create solutions of how to manufacture and deliver these very effective vaccines.
Some experts are discussing so-called efficacy of the vaccine regarding to contain the current pandemics. So I'm just wondering, what's your opinion? Whether we need to get a third shot in the near future to prevent the pandemic infection?
Yeah. So most vaccines in the market, including the mRNA vaccines like Pfizer or Moderna, and the adenovirus vaccines like AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson, they are all very effective vaccines. And also there are protein-based vaccines like Novavax that are highly effective. And so the vaccines are very effective. However, we now know that, for example, in the case of Pfizer vaccines, 6 months after vaccination, the immune response could wane. And so the effectiveness in a population like Israel, for example, for people who has been vaccinated over 6 months ago, is very low, is 16%. So they would need an additional shot in 6 to 8 months. Now, Moderna has shown efficacy even after 6 months. And so it also varies on the technology. And these are very preliminary data. So we have to continue to watch to see, to track, people who has been vaccinated. But in the immediate 6 months after vaccination, the vaccine is highly effective against hospitalizations or death, and also against infections as well.
Okay, given the current deterioration of the global pandemic situation, I'm just wondering what's your advice for Taiwan's government and also for Taiwanese people in Taiwan?
Yeah, I think for the Taiwan government, I think Taiwan has already acquired a lot of vaccines from abroad, and I think ensuring its prompt delivery to Taiwan would be very important. Taiwan also has developed a domestic vaccine, and I think to reassure the public that the vaccine is effective, continue study and monitoring of the vaccine will be necessary, so that even though the vaccine has now been approved under emergency use basis, that public trust is extremely important to get people to get vaccinated, both with the domestic vaccine and also with foreign vaccines that's been imported. So try to build public trust. I think that will be critical, addressing public's questions about the vaccines.
That is, we need to answer the question every day regarding the question raised by the people in Taiwan and try to build their trust so that government can implement the vaccination policy more effectively. Is it correct?
Yes, and also to fight fake news. I also found that there's lots of fake news regarding the vaccines in the Taiwanese media. So if you find something that's not correct, I think reputable scholars or organizations should call them out and say this is not correct, and this is a myth of the vaccine, and trying to bring the best evidence to the public.
So given your professional background, we hope we can interview you more in the future, even in a regular basis, so that you can try to clarify some fake news or even give us some more professional advice regarding Taiwan's vaccination policy or even the overall preventive policy for containing the global pandemic situation. So thank you very much for your presence and also your good advice. Hopefully we can continue to interview very soon. Thank you, Professor Wang.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.